What is going on, everybody? Your faceless host is here back again, guys, talking fantasy football. The fantasy coach is here, talking week 4 starts and sits here. We have another great episode for you guys today here. A little late on a normal time slot, but we have been having issues getting Thursday times going for us between me and Coach Tyler. And of course, Coach Tyler is here today. What's going on, Coach Tyler?
What's up, guys? Hey, Saturday streams are fun streams. Let's have a good time.
Yeah, absolutely. So if you're listening live on our YouTube channel and you're watching us live, please feel free to jump in and ask some questions, and we will go through every single game talking about the players that are kind of more on the fence per se than actually starts and sits. I mean, we'll talk about everyone, but we're going to mostly get into players who you're not sure if you should start them or not sit them, because those are the important players to really talk about when it comes to fantasy football. So week 4 has been a doozy already. A lot of players already out. Trey McBride, Devonta Smith, Jalen Warren. I'm trying to think of other ones. A lot of question marks with game time decisions and Justin Herbert, Joe Mixon, Deebo Samuels, George Kittle's back. It's a lot of a big mess. Let's just say that for football. But we'll do our best today to kind of break down each game and go through the motions there. So let's start here. Not at number 1. Yes, the first game that we're going to talk about here is the Denver Broncos and the New York Jets. And confidently, I think there's only really one player you can probably confidently start, and that's only my own opinion, obviously, is Breece Hall. He's the most safest player, I think, out of this entire bunch here. Some players that probably won't have much of an impact are Bo Nix, Aaron Rodgers, Javonte Williams, Jalen McLaughlin, Greg Dulcich, and Courtland Sutton, per se. But Coach Ty, I want to talk about this middle group here, especially Garrett Wilson. And you might consider Garrett Wilson a confident start here, but obviously he will be playing across from, for the most part, Patrick Surtain, who has limited top-tier wide receivers when he has them on coverage this season. So are you nervous at all about Garrett Wilson's upside this week, or,
Yeah, definitely nervous about his upside. In full PPR scoring, he hasn't put up a week above wide receiver 29 yet. And that's, of course, against 3 fairly tough defenses. You've got San Francisco, you've got Tennessee, and then being shadowed mostly by Christian Gonzalez against New England. So he's had a rough go of it from the start. But Garrett Wilson is this elite talent that everyone was super excited for when he was finally going to get a quarterback. And Aaron Rodgers is back, and it looks almost like the same Garrett Wilson that we've seen in the past. And, part of that is him just being on the Jets as a whole. But, yeah, going up against Surtain, one of the best coverage corners in the league, I'm not overly excited in terms of what I think I can get out of him. He's a guy that I drafted so high that I probably don't have an option to put in place of him unless I really just went ham on receivers. But, we see wide receiver 29, wide receiver 33, and wide receiver 29 finishes this season. So I wouldn't expect him to go over the wide receiver 24 unless he was just really, eating Surtain's lunch that day.
Yeah, no, I agree with you on that. I mean, personally, how I overall feel is just like, you obviously start him, lower expectation, unless you really have like a true player on your bench that you can start in front of him. Like, I'm highly considering starting Khaled Shakir over Garrett Wilson. That's like my personal opinion. Like, I feel like that it gives me a safer play than what Garrett Wilson could give, just because of what he hasn't really shown us this season compared to prior years. And, Aaron Rodgers is not just feeding him the ball like consistently to what we saw the last few seasons. He has other options that he trusts also in these offenses to throw to, especially a guy like Allen Lazard, Tyler Conklin here. You have Braylon Allen. Are you considering any of those guys as potential starts this week, Coach Tyler?
None necessarily as confident starts. I like him here on the fence. We've seen a couple boom games from each of these guys. Obviously, Braylon Allen coming in a blowout game and getting his week 2. But Allen Lazard, he still has that chemistry with Aaron Rodgers. Obviously, he got brought over from the Packers whenever Rodgers made the switch. And obviously, he had a great week 1. But he's still really that downfield threat for them. Last week only 3 receptions, but averaged 16 yards a reception, put up a touchdown. And he's someone that is obviously going to be that field stretcher for them. He's someone that Rodgers has a lot of snaps with, a good relationship with. But I want to see a little bit more consistency out of that relationship before I put Lazard anywhere near a confident start. And then Conklin, same thing. Just, big boom game last week. Obviously, the tight end landscape is decimated this year. So Conklin might be a very confident start for you, just seeing what he did last week, 5 for 93 on 6 targets. But I, again, want to see a little bit more just before I'm making moves to slot him in immediately.
No, that's fair. I mean, Conklin is one of my sleepers this week just because I feel like, the wide receivers are going to have tough matchups, which will maybe allow Tyler Conklin to kind of have a little bit of an easier day going with Rodgers. We saw that like somewhat last week when they were playing the Patriots, and he ended up having a really strong day for fantasy football. So it's interesting with Tyler Conklin. Lazard's, flex guy at best. Braylon Allen is like a desperate RB2 if you're thinking that the Jets are going to run over this Denver Broncos defense, and then that's really it. I put Josh Reynolds kind of up in that like deep sleeper flex appeal. I feel like he's the only one that's been really productive for the Jets this season here, so he's a fine option in that sense, especially maybe in 14, 16-man leagues. You should be able to get decent production out of him in this week's matchup. So, all right, second game, big divisional game here. Minnesota Vikings, Green Bay Packers. I think confidently you could probably say you could start Sam Darnold this week here. You should be pretty happy about his production. Both running backs, Aaron Jones, Josh Jacobs, and then the top wide receiver for both teams, Justin Jefferson and Jaden Reed here. Those are probably the most confident starts. If you're looking for players who aren't going to probably touch lineups this week, you're looking at small impact players like we don't know if Jordan Love's starting or not, but if it's not Jordan Love, I'm not going to go back to Malik Willis based on his week 3 production personally. Ty Chandler, Emmanuel Wilson, I don't think there's going to be enough running ability for both these teams to be able to have their backups do well. Christian Watson, Dontavian Wicks, all the tight ends in these matchups. I had Jordan Addison there, but I moved him out of that to that fence player. So, Coach Tyler, let's talk about Jordan Addison. Coming off first game since week 1. I think he might have played a little bit in week 2, but how do you feel about Jordan Addison in his first game back this week?
I'm honestly, whoever ends up being the wide receiver 2 for the Vikings, I think is going to have a good day. I think Addison is the one that's going to slot in there with them being confident in his return. Just because Jefferson really struggles when the Vikings play at Green Bay. I say struggles. He's a double-digit fantasy scorer. But we look at his career going at Green Bay, starting from his rookie season in full PPR, 5.6 points, 11.8 points, 2.5 points, and then was injured last year when they went to Green Bay. So he's probably going to pull Jair Alexander for most of this game, if not all of it. That's obviously a big battle, top dog against top dog. But I think that elevates whoever the wide receiver 2 is, because you won't be able to look at Justin Jefferson as much. Now, Sam Darnold's been really just blowing the world away with what he's been doing. This offense has been blowing the world away. So I wouldn't be surprised if Addison comes in and slots immediately in as the wide receiver 2, if you get a great first week back from him. But also be prepared for Jalen Naylor to really kind of hold down that spot as they possibly ease Addison back in, even if he is playing, 70-ish% of snaps.
Yeah, that's fair. I think it's going to be a bit of a mix in terms of snaps between both these guys, Naylor and Addison here. I think both will have extended opportunities on the field. I don't expect Jordan Addison to kind of go back to having like a full workload in his first week back here. I think he's going to be capped a little bit because Naylor has done so well in the offense here. I have them both. I think it's like wide receiver 4, wide receiver 5s. Like they're not like confident plays at all, and they're not like strong flexes, but they could maybe be able to be used in a pinch in this game. Hopefully this game kind of turns into being high scoring and whatnot here. Again, I had Romeo Doubs kind of here because he's just kind of been consistent as a wide receiver 5. Again, he's probably not going to put up a big game like Jaden Reed will, but he probably won't hurt you as bad as if you were going to start Christian Watson or Dontavian Wicks. So that's kind of why I have him on the fence. And then, are you playing Jordan Love first game back?
Yeah, we saw it was all limited fashion, but we saw him in practice all last week. So I'm going through practice all this week. And so I think they feel confident on putting him back out on the field. Obviously, big divisional matchup, big rivalry game at home in Lambeau. You obviously want to win that game, both for your fans and just for your franchise. But I don't think they would be dumb enough to rush Jordan Love out without him being ready. And so I think just seeing 2 weeks, even in limited fashion of practice, I think that they feel confident in him coming back and being ready to play.
Yeah, that's fair. Yeah, I mean, if they expect him to be on the field there, it was pretty serious thing in week 1 here. So if they're putting him back on the field, you have to feel confident that they feel confident that he's going to be able to produce on the field here. And I think most people need to have Jordan Love back in their lineup because the upside he offers with his arm ability. I mean, people who've been using like the Jared Goffs, the Sam Donald, not Sam Donald, the Matthew Stafford, Geno Smiths, like it's just like you want to put a guy like Jordan Love back in your lineup because of the ability that he offers, his upside. So I mean, I'm starting him in a lot of places that I need to because I haven't had the quarterback to play over him, and I'm just going to go right back to Jordan Love because I'm hoping that the upside is still there. All right, next game, New Orleans Saints and the Atlanta Falcons here. Again, confident starts. Alvin Kamara, Bijan Robinson. I know both are kind of dealing with some sort of overall injury. So with Kamara, you might want to keep your eyes out for that. Jamal Williams will then become somewhat of an option if Kamara is to be out. Drake London should be a fine play at least. Chris Olave is dealing with a hamstring injury that he suffered in practice this week, I believe it is. So he's kind of more of a game time decision. So he may not be as confident as a start, but you have to assume that he's going to see the work if he is able to play on the field. But there is some like scary bewares with him. The small impact side of things, you're looking at Derek Carr, Christian Kirk. God, I can't talk today. Kirk Cousins. Like I don't expect those quarterbacks to have big games. They're do good enough to help their skill players, but not enough to be able to be like strong QB1 options or QB2 options this week. Again, Jamal Williams, Tyler Algier, not really relevant unless something happened to Kamara or Robinson, and then New Orleans tight ends, just kind of avoid that mess of a situation there. But let's talk about some of the guys on the fence here. Coach Tyler, how confident do you feel about Kyle Pitts and Darnell Mooney?
Kyle Pitts, obviously we saw the big reception from him last week, but it's just been as inconsistent as it has been with him. First week obviously finds the end zone. The world rejoices because he doesn't even know what that place looks like. But just scoring on that alone, plus 3 receptions for 25 yards, puts him at tight end 4. And then week 2, we've got again another 3 for 20, but lo and behold, no end zone. So it drops him down to tight end 21. And then he has that long reception last week, but only 2 receptions on the game. And so I want to see him integrated more. I want to see him used more. I feel like, again, he's a guy that you drafted too high to not use. Like, even just name value alone, you were taking him too high. And so he's a guy that I really want to see go out and be used as more of a part of this offense because obviously we love the athletic ability and his ability to go down and make these, somewhat over the middle receptions, long receptions. But that's not a consistent enough factor to keep getting you fantasy points. And if he's just going to be putting up 3 for 20s every week and you're just banking on him hopefully finding the end zone, which watching his career, he's not going to do a ton for you, then you're just not putting yourself in a good position. So I want to see him used more consistently. Mooney has been used a ton the past couple weeks, 93 and 100% of snaps over the past 2 weeks, 7 and 8 targets. And so he's getting used as much as a wide receiver 2 should. And he's, going almost neck and neck with Drake London in terms of their fantasy finishes. And so he's a guy that I've liked watching, a guy that I've liked as a later guy, a lot cheaper option if you're looking for early season trades or if he's even floating around on your waiver wire somewhere. But he's being used in this offense almost as the wide receiver 1. Obviously, Drake London holds that title, but I think Mooney is still valuable. He's a flex piece, if anything. but just the way that they've been almost force feeding him targets, it's helping to maintain that value.
Yeah, no, I completely agree with you. Oh, we actually have a comment in the chat here. What's going on, guys? Thoughts of starting Jennings and Roma Dunze this week here. So, Coach Tyler, why don't you get into that? Are you feel good about it? Starting both Juwan Jennings and Roma Dunze?
Juwan Jennings, yeah, I
think if
feel
Debo's out.
So if Debo's out, that makes me think that Christian Gonzalez is going to be on Ayuk. I will say I do think last week was a very fluky game. Obviously, Juwan Jennings isn't a bad receiver, but I would put a lot of money on him never touching above 30 points in a fantasy game again. But if Gonzalez is on Ayuk, especially with how slow Ayuk has been to start the season, I do think Jennings could be a big beneficiary of that. Obviously, Kittle is coming back too, and we know how much Shanahan likes to run Kittle in this offense. And so that could damper or put a damper on Jennings' value a little bit. But I like him with the idea of he's possibly the number one or number two option in the passing game, with Ayuk being sort of held down with the Christian Gonzalez shadow with that matchup there. And then Roma Dunze, so he's good to go. He'd been limited in practice with this hip injury. I like him going. Obviously, Keenan Allen is questionable, and they're saying that he's trending towards playing. But everything behind Keenan Allen has been this injury to start the season and how, overweight he came into camp and how big he looked and how slow he looked and everything that there was. And so I think Odunze maintains flex value here. I don't think he has, an incredibly big boom week just because this Rams secondary is very exploitable. But I like Odunze in the flex. If I'm picking one, I want to say Jennings over Odunze. But I feel confident in both of them going in as flex spots, or if you need them at a wide receiver 2 or 3 option for you, depending on how your league is set up, I'm confident throwing them in there.
Yeah, that's fair. I kind of agree with you on that whole notion there. I mean, both are good plays, especially if Debo Samuels is out. I think it would be Odunze Jennings if Debo plays. If it's not Debo, then Juwan Jennings, Odunze. Kind of how I feel about the situation here. But yeah, back to the Saints Falcons game here, guys. I mean, Kyle Pitts, he's fine. Again, until he shows us the upside he's ones that we want in him. I won't really plan on starting. I start Kyle Pitts, but there's don't expect upside. That's just you're going to get what you get out of him, and that's it. You're getting 6 or 7 points most weeks, and that's about it. Darnell Mooney is fine. I think he'll do well in the slot. Saints do give up some good production to slot wide receivers this year. And if Chris Olave is out, Rashad Shaheed, he's still a wide receiver from 3 for me. I just feel like he's just kind of like a one-trick pony. That's kind of how I feel about him. He only has a deep ball game to his play, and if he's not catching those balls, it's kind of nerve-wracking starting Shaheed unless you need that boom or bust play from him this week. So another question in the chat here is wanting to bench Patrick Mahomes an overreaction.
Yes and no, depending on who you have behind him. I actually just worked a trade in one of my dynasty leagues. One of our managers had Jaden Daniels on the bench or on his taxi, and he was itching to pull him up, and he had Patrick Mahomes, and notable Texas Tech fan right here, and so obviously wanted in on Mahomes. So I was able to work a trade with his lower production to start this season. Fields is your backup. I feel like Fields this week would be a good start just because Indy's defense hasn't been all that great, and I think they're going to be able to run the ball extremely well, especially utilizing Fields for that. And Mahomes is going up against the Chargers, who isn't a great defense. They are missing some guys, but I wouldn't say it's an overreaction. Obviously Kelsey hasn't started the way that everyone expected him to. Nothing major happened over the offseason outside of him following around Taylor Swift that would lead to him slowing down in production. So obviously we want to see Kelsey get ramped up. But I think with the lack of run game, they've expected, I think I've heard 6 to 8 weeks for Isaiah Pacheco. We saw Mahomes last week throw the ball 39 times as opposed to 28 and 25 in the first couple games. And so he's going to have more opportunity to be that vintage Mahomes that has to win the game with his arm. And that's honestly a great spot to be in for fantasy managers. This week, I wouldn't doubt you if you told me that I wouldn't doubt you if you told me that you were starting Fields over Mahomes, just matchup wise. But I think at least until we get Isaiah Pacheco back, I think Mahomes is going to ramp up to what he used to be because this team can't be a running team like they want to be with Pacheco.
That's fair. That's fair. Yeah. I do expect the passing offense to kind of take another step forward without a strong run game here. I mean, I know they ran the ball a decent amount last week here, but this is a game where I think Mahomes should kind of bounce back against the Chargers defense, who I think Derwin James is out this week of a suspension. So it's even more of a reason why. And then I think Joey Bosa is going to be out as well. So it's just like it's a recipe for the offense, the passing offense to really thrive this week against the Chargers. But it's not an overreaction. I think if you want to start Fields, you can. But I wouldn't be surprised if they both end up with, 17, 18 fantasy points, which would be like an uptake for Fields and obviously kind of like a bad game for Mahomes. But it's not an overreaction to wanting to sit Mahomes. I think I'm still starting Mahomes over Fields, even though Fields has a decent matchup. So that's just kind of how I feel about it. All right, over to the next game here. Eagles Bucks. This should be a really fun game here. A lot of good starts, obviously. A lot of confident starts. Let's say that. You still start Jalen Hurts, Baker Mayfield, obviously Saquon Barkley, Dallas Goedert, Mike Evans, Chris Godwin. Kate Auden is probably going to make a small impact, so he's probably not worth starting. Let's talk about the running backs here, Coach Tyler. Rachaad White, Bucky Irving. Irving's dealing with a hamstring injury, but he plans on playing Sunday. Do you still kind of have confidence in White now if Irvin's kind of limited in any way?
I wouldn't say I have confidence in White, not because Irving is just that much better in pushing into his touches, but because White has just been so inefficient with what he's gotten this year that he could have all the carries and still, he's averaging, I think it's just over 2.3 yards a carry this season. So if you give him 25 carries, you might get, 50-something yards out of him and hope he falls into the end zone. But White's just been so inefficient. And this Philly defense isn't a bad defense. Obviously we've seen them get beat by the pass more than they have the run. So if I was putting money on anyone having a good game, it would be an Evans-Godwin combination there. But White has just been so inefficient that even if Irving isn't out there, it would take a, difference of a game from what he's had this season for me to be any kind of confident in having him on my starting lineup.
Yeah, that's fair. I mean, with White, the way I see it is just that he's not going to run very efficiently in this game here. The best is you're hoping that he has some passing numbers, and that's what you need out of him, especially if Bucky Irving is not playing at full capacity this week here. That will be something that you want to go after. I think he's still an RB3. He's like an okay flex option. I think that it's more of a floor play than a ceiling play with White. Irving, I'd kind of wait and see how he does this week here because the hamstring does bother me. Hamstring injuries are kind of are interesting situation. That's for sure. That's for say so. And then the wide receivers here for the Eagles. I mean, Devonta Smith's already out. I think can you say confidently say AJ Brown plays? AJ Brown's a start.
If he plays, I think he's a start. I do want to say it was AJ Brown. It was, I guess, a couple years ago. he had, a hamstring soft tissue injury where they said that he was good to go. They said that he was going to play, and then he was just a decoy on the field the whole time. If I'm remembering that right, I want to say that was AJ Brown. But if they say he's good to go, he's a start for me. Obviously, you don't want to end up in that situation where he's just out there to kind of get cardio and take the attention away from other guys on the offense. But with DeMonta Smith out, if he's 100% good to go, or at least like 85% good to go, he should see the bulk of the targets this game, in conjunction with Dallas Goedert. And so I think it will be a run heavy game no matter what, just because that's kind of how the Eagles like to roll. They've had Barkley on a run. They have Jalen Hurts, who's about, one of the best mobile quarterbacks in the league. And so I think it's going to be a heavier run game just with the lack of receivers out there. But if A.J. Brown starts, I think you start.
Yeah, I think so too. I think AJ Brown, you just kind of have to start him, unless you have really like strong options like Khalil Shakir, another guy that you can argue. I think you could start him because he will give you 12 points. While AJ Brown, he is a decoy. Maybe he's just out there to kind of help, take the top off a team and give the options to Barkley and Dallas Goedert. Or he might end up going out there and scoring 25 fantasy points. That's just the way fantasy football works. But if there's a safer player in your team, like a Khalil Shakir, like I'm okay starting him. But if not, AJ Brown has that upside that you want to take against a Bucs secondary that is still missing some key star players on that offense. So, all right, next game, Bengals Panthers here. This was interesting. The 0-3 Bengals and the 1-2 Panthers. Definitely didn't expect to hear that when it comes to week 4. But confident starts. I think you can start Burrow and Chase. That combination has just been. Well, it showed us that it can be very lethal still. Last week, and the Panthers secondary is still not very good. Zach Moss showed that he's still dominating this backfield here, and he looked really good actually for once last week. Chuba Hubbard, again, same thing, has kind of started to catch fire and is maybe his last week of being the true RB1 for this team here. So they're going to probably fire him up as much as possible. Smaller impacts. Andy Dalton, I know everyone loves a good revenge game, but Andy Dalton really hasn't done well versus the Bengals since leaving Cincinnati. So I don't expect that to kind of take more for him, even with a worse team he's on now. Tommy Tremble, Xavier Leggett probably jumps in as a slot for Adam Thielen, but I need to see it before I kind of play him. And then Miles Sanders, I just don't expect there's going to be enough run game this week for him to have a garbage time touchdown again this week. So kind of comes down to, T. Higgins. How do we feel about T. Higgins? Had 6 targets last week, only caught 3 for 39 yards. Not a great week, but obviously promising in this first game here. Good matchup. Are you firing up T. Higgins on all cylinders?
Yeah, I'm going to fire him up. Obviously first came back, he was out there for 90% of snaps. But also Chase was just electric. And so I don't know why you wouldn't force the ball to Chase in a game like that. But I think that he's going to be fine. We see projections for him, his over-unders 4.5 receptions, 53 yards. So I feel confident if he goes out and puts up that day. I'm not upset about it. Obviously, I'd like more. But I think he's a startable player. Obviously, they don't want to just throw him to the Wolves immediately. But this is a very favorable matchup just for all of Cincinnati. And so I think that he is going to come out and really start to begin his 2024 season this week.
That's fair. Yeah, I kind of agree too. I think T. Higgins is a guy you want to fire up. Obviously, is a must-start option. He's seeing the target share, which was great. If he gets his full offensive snap share back, he should be fine in this matchup as a solid wide receiver too. That does unfortunately hurt Andres Ilovich. Can't say his name, but the third wide receiver for the Bengals, who've been playing pretty solid to start the season, to be honest. He looked really good here. So, I mean, they've had 3 wide receivers be decent in the past with Tyler Boyd in the past. So I don't expect it to go too crazy, but Higgins, I think, should see the targets. And then Andres, he's more of I think a touchdown dependent wide receiver 5 that if he scores, he has a decent week. If he doesn't score, you're looking at 3 receptions, 30 yards kind of things. Yeah, not great, not good. But yeah, T. Higgins, start him up. Chase Brown, he ran well last week. He's kind of more of a desperation play personally to me. It's like you're really desperate if you want to start Chase Brown this week here. I know he's looked good, but I don't think he's earned enough of a larger role just yet. Andre Johnson, God, Deontay Johnson, Coach Tyler. Are we okay starting Deontay Johnson?
Yeah, with Dalton out there, obviously the offense as a whole looked better, but the passing game looked a lot better, and we saw Johnson get 14 targets, and so we know that Dalton's going to lean on him if he's out there. Obviously, coming in with that questionable tag for a groin injury, but if I know that he's going to go out and get double-digit targets, I like the opportunity for production, and so I would fire him up if he's good to go, even with Dalton not having the greatest history against the Bengals, because the Panthers are going to have to score somehow.
Yeah, that's fair. I mean, even with his injury that Deontay Johnson's dealing with this week here, I think you have to have enough confidence that he's going to get peppered with targets this week through Andy Dalton here, and he should be fine just on that alone. Like, he showed that first game with Andy Dalton, he's getting 14 targets in the game here. And Adam Thielen left, and he started gaining even more targets. So it's going to be even more relied on Deontay Johnson to lead this team here. So fire Deontay Johnson up, obviously, this week. Mike Gesicki, fine tight end too. I don't know how much his workload is going to be with T. Higgins back. It was fine last week, but how much is he going to see these 6 or 6 target games? Like, he's more of like a 3 or 4 if T. Higgins is on the field here. So I expect him to kind of regress going forward, but in this game, more of like a tight end too. All right, Jacksonville Texans here. Obviously, CJ Stroud, Nico Collins, Tank Dell's out this week, unfortunately. But CJ Stroud, Nico Collins, and Stephon Diggs, that must-start trio right there is an obvious must-start option. Travis Etienne, I think, is a pretty confident start. The matchup is really good. I still think that he is the number one option there, even with the week 1 thing with Tank Bigsby. Speaking of Tank Bigsby, I just don't think the impact's there at this moment. He needs to show us again that he can see 12 carries again before we really trust him in lineups. Trevor Lawrence has had a shitty career against Houston since being in the league here, and I'm not trusting him and coming off another bad week. Brenton Strange, he caught the touchdown last week, but tough matchup. Dalton Schultz, he probably should maybe be more on the fence, but I'm keeping him here because he really hasn't shown us anything enough to trust him this year that he can produce in matchups, and Gabe Davis is another option here. Just you don't really see much of an impact. We have a question in the chat from Chris. Should I start Malik Willis or Tyler Huntley this week here? So, Coach Tyler, how do you handle this?
Let me see.
Miami hasn't announced their quarterback yet.
So Miami versus Tennessee. So neither are good matchups. Game time decision for both of them. I'm gonna be honest. I don't feel like both of these guys will be the starter. I feel like it's going to be one or the other. Obviously, Jordan Love might be back this week, so that might knock Malik Willis out. Tyler Huntley might be the starter over Skylar Thompson. We'll see what that announcement is. That'll be obviously closer to game time. But I feel like if I knew that they were both starting, I kind of want to go Huntley against Tennessee. Just the weapons and the offense I like a little bit more, just because there's multiple weapons as opposed to really kind of 1/2 with the Vikings. But also we just saw or with Green Bay, but we just saw the Vikings, hold this Texans offense, who is supposed to be this high-flying, prolific offense. We saw them hold them to 7 points and, not a ton of fancy production. So I wouldn't necessarily love Malik Willis going up against that, even in the home environment of Lambeau. And Tyler Huntley was a Pro Bowler at one point, somehow surprisingly. And so I'll take Tyler Huntley against Tennessee if he is the starter, assuming both of them are starters. Obviously, keep a very close ear to the ground on who they'll announce, because we have Miami on that Monday night game, so you can't really make a game time decision with them playing at the same time.
Right. I mean, they did announce Huntley as a starter. When did they do that? Not that I'm questioning you, Chris, at all, but as a Dolphins fan, I haven't heard it yet today. So
I'm seeing on Sleeper they announced it 25 minutes ago.
Oh, well, that's why. I am not on my Sleeper app very much. And I am, but I have not checked in the last half an hour since we've been podcasting. So thank you, Chris. Thank you for that update. Live news. I love that. He said, I got Love on Island. I'll be starting Love. Yeah. As long as Love is playing, I'm starting him. If it's not Love, I'm probably going to lean Huntley personally. I just feel like the matchup's a slight bit easier than dealing with that Minnesota Vikings defense, who's really, really good, unfortunately. So it's kind of the way I see it. Tank Dell, I had him on the injury thing. That's before I knew he was out. Cam Akers, I think he's a solid, borderline RB2, RB3. As long as they run the ball this week. Again, they kind of fell behind Houston, unfortunately, last week, so they should be ahead, allowing Cam Akers to be fine. But I wouldn't call him a confident start, but he should be a fine play as a flex option. Kirk and Brian Thomas Jr. are both solid flex options this week. I do like Thomas over Kirk if I had to choose between the two this week. So I think Thomas could end up having a decent outing this week. All right. Pittsburgh Steelers, Indianapolis Colts here. Confidence starts at this point here. Najee Harris, no Jalen Warren. Najee Harris should be in for a good game. Jonathan Taylor, I think he's just his name value and his talent just makes him still a confident start. George Pickens, I feel like he's just a confident start seeing the targets in that Steelers offense. Small impact Players, Colts secondary, tight ends. I think Alec Pierce kind of goes away a little bit more and more now that Josh Downs is back on the field, and Calvin Austin, I'm not trusting his 91-yard touchdown game last week here. I'm just not dealing with that. Again, I need to see it, consistency. Fields or Richardson this week, Coach Tyler? I have him on the fence. I don't think I trust him 100% either one, but who are you playing between the two?
Between the two, I would have to go Fields just because the Steelers defense is so difficult. Obviously, Richardson had a pretty good week 1 against Houston. And then these past 2 weeks have been just, for lack of a better word, terrible. And I'm, a big Richardson believer, mostly for fantasy purposes. I don't think he's going to be any kind of Super Bowl winning quarterback, but I think that he can rush for 60 yards and a touchdown just about every game once he starts to get that offense together. But I would have to take Fields over Richardson. Fields has more experience. Fields he has the better matchup against this Colts defense than Richardson would have against the Steelers defense. And so give me Fields over Richardson, which pains me in so many ways to say.
That's fair. I'm kind of on the same page. I kind of want to start Fields over Richardson. I'm concerned with Richardson's decrease in his production over each of the last 3 weeks here. And the Steelers defense is no slouch. They're an elite defense here. And Richardson's just not running the ball as I kind of thought he would this season here. And again, he's still kind of a rookie. So, I mean, there's going to be ups and downs with him. And right now, he's kind of on the downside right now, unfortunately, with fantasy. And his passing efficiency, not been that great. I've seen multiple times watching him on TV is that his throws are just kind of all over the place. So, I think I kind of want to start Justin Fields over Richardson personally. I think Fields is still kind of that upside QB2 start that you're hoping that he kind of gets a rushing floor, sees a couple big plays. That's the big part about him. Pat Freiermuth, again, fine tight end. Cordell Patterson is an RB4 with maybe some upside if they use him a lot. It just seems like a Cordell Patterson game coming down the stretch here, and this could be a week right here where he sees it. I think Josh Downs is a fine slot guy this week as a wide receiver 4. I'm okay with him as a potential sleeper option. What about Michael Pittman Jr. there, Coach Tyler? Is he sit or start for you?
He's going to be a sit for me. Just kind of like we talked about this matchup for Richardson. Obviously, Richardson hadn't been the greatest throwing the ball, and Pittman has really disappointed because of that this season. Full PPR scoring. We've got a wide receiver 58 finish, wide receiver 63, and wide receiver 54. And that's on 8, 7, and 5 targets. Obviously, I don't have the catchable target number in front of me, but that's just not something that I want to put out there, knowing that he's consistently been below a wide receiver 50 every week this season, especially going into a tough matchup. I don't foresee a ton of that changing unless something just clicked for Richardson this past week in practice. But he's not a guy that I'm going to want to start until I see more production. Obviously, I think he is the wide receiver 1 on this team, but with Richardson's lack of value in the passing game, I don't know how much that truly means.
Yeah, no. I'm kind of on the same boat when it comes to Michael Pittman Jr. Like I have no interest in starting Michael Pittman Jr. at all. Like, you have to be almost desperate at this point to start Michael Pittman Jr. Yes, the targets are there, and that's fantastic for fantasy, but the production has just not been there. And I don't expect that to change against the Steelers this week. Steelers have been really good at locking down wide receivers in fantasy. No interest in starting Michael Pittman Jr. I'd rather start Josh Downs and take that opportunity with he's showing and what Michael Pittman has given us on the field so far this year. Rams, Bears. Rams, Bears here. Confident starts. I think it's just at this point, it's just DJ Moore, Carrion Williams. They're the only two must-start options that are you pretty confident in. People that I don't really expect to make a big impact: Matthew Stafford, Kobe Parkinson. Let's talk about some of the on the fence guys here. I'm going to go through some of these guys real quick here. Cole Kmet, I think he's a fine low-end tight end 1. Caleb Williams is the upside QB2 this week in a good matchup. Do you start DeAndre Swift this week here? It's a very favorable matchup, or do you maybe take a chance on Roschon Johnson, who showed us more than what Swift has this year?
I think I'd take, if you're in a PPR league, I think I'd take Roschon over Swift. We saw him come out. I think he took every third down snap, every 2-minute snap this past week against Indy. And that's obviously a recipe with a rookie quarterback for success, because he's going to have so many checkdowns that he can take. And he's just been really a better rusher this season. We see 3 yards per carry, 1.29 and 1.54 for Swift. Now, obviously, a decent amount of that is accredited not to Swift's talent, but to the abysmal offensive line that the Bears have. But we did see Roschon go out and average just under 4 yards a carry behind this same abysmal offensive line, plus pull in 4 receptions on 5 targets. So even in that, you're making up ground. So if I'm in a PPR league, I'm going to take Roschon over Swift, even half PPR. I think that the reception volume could outweigh the rushing inability for both guys behind this offensive line. Obviously, favorable matchup, but when you've got guys that are standing out there that don't understand how to block someone, it doesn't really matter. I could go out there and possibly hold them to 2 yards per carry behind that offensive line. So
Yeah, no, it's a really bad offensive line for Chicago. I agree with you. I think in PPR leagues, like, Roschon Johnson might be the better option for you right now. Swift, I don't really want to start him in lineups. Like, and he's another desperate option that you hope that this is the better week where he has a chance of having another favorable matchup and do well. And then that's the key for the Bears, is that, like, hopefully that Swift can get something going. But if not, I think Roschon might see a big workload in this game if Swift, is very inefficient early. Rams wide receivers, again, it's kind of a tougher matchup. Like, if you're going to start one of them, it's Demarcus Robinson. You throw at Tutu Atwell after last week, and then Tyler Johnson is probably like the least likely to want to start him. Roma Dunze, he's a better start if Keenan Allen's out. If Keenan Allen's in, he's kind of more of like a borderline flex play. So is Keenan Allen, because we don't know what Keenan Allen's going to bring to the team. He saw the team leader in targets the week he was on the field, but Roma Dunze is coming off a fantastic game. So, and again, really great matchup for both these wide receivers. All 3 wide receivers have a fantastic matchup. So, Moore is a trusted option. Dunze is better without Keenan, and Keenan and Dunze together are kind of like borderline flex plays this week. So, all right, JJ Wolfpack, which 2 running backs should I start? Devon Achane, James Cook, or James Conner?
So we've got Achane against Tennessee.
Yes,
love that.
Buffalo versus Buffalo versus the Ravens, and Arizona versus Washington.
Man, so I'm going to put Conner in there because he's playing Washington easily. Honestly, give me Cook over Achane.
Okay.
I think just because, even like, especially with Huntley in there, I feel like this offense is pretty one-dimensional. Just because it's not Tua. They don't have the ability to use all the weapons that they have. I think it's going to be easier to slow Achane down. Cook has been on such a run against, well, really every team. But against the Ravens, I think he can go out there and run the ball. And James Conner has obviously seen the volume, and he has the matchup that anyone would dream of having against the Commanders. And so I think he goes out there, obviously last week was a stinker against Detroit. They kind of had to throw the ball more, didn't get as much on the ground, but he was a top 8 running back the first 2 weeks of the season. And so I think he can go out there against the Commanders and do it again. So give me Cook and Connor in that.
Yeah, that's tough. I'm gonna say Cook and Connor too. I kind of want to go A-Chain over Cook because of the matchup, but I don't trust the Dolphins offense. As a Dolphins fan, I'm saying that over Buffalo's. So that makes me want to go with Cook and take the better matchup for me personally. And then James Conner, I just feel like he just has the best matchup of all 3 of these guys here. So I'd probably also sit Devon A-Chain, which I hate to do that. So
it's just going to be easy to load the box against them.
Right, exactly. Commanders Cardinals game. First afternoon game, whatever. I want to talk about my Dolphins. Commanders Cardinals game here. Must starts. Both quarterbacks, Daniels and Murray, both confident starts. Running backs, Brian Robinson, James Conner, the most start options, and Marvin Harrison Jr. Those are the most start options for this team. Small impact players, probably Luke McCaffrey and Noah Brown. So let's talk about Terry McLaurin here, Coach Tyler. Great game finally last week. Big game last week here. Do you trust him into this matchup here against the Cardinals?
I trust him in it. He's seen the target volume from Daniels. It's just been turning those into favorable yards. Obviously, we had the long touchdown reception last week, averaged 25 yards a catch for the week, for the night. But, it's just turning those receptions into yards. Week 1, we didn't really have either 2 receptions on 17 yards. Week 2, we had 6 receptions, but it was only for 22 yards. And then obviously last week we had 4 receptions, but for 100 yards and then a touchdown. And so it's really just figuring out how to put it all together. He's really good at getting one or the other. He's either getting the receptions or he's getting the yards. But if we can put it all together, then he gets back to the Terry McLaurin that people drafted and really were excited for. But I still put him in. I think that as Daniels continues to grow and dominate, I think that they figure it out. And Terry McLaurin is obviously the number 1 beneficiary of all that.
Yeah, I think it really depends on your team and what you have. Personally, I think McLaurin's starting ability is team dependent. Like I said, I don't think he's a must start option. But if you don't have a clear option, is it a wide receiver 2 or wide receiver? Or it's a flex option. He's a decent flex option, I think, this week that you can take the chance on because I do expect this game to be higher scoring. But I also don't expect Terry McLaurin to automatically have a great game. He should, but I'm not confident as I am with going with Marvin Harrison this week in terms of that sense. Zach Ertz, decent tight end too. Elijah Higgins, he's got a lot of upside for a backup tight end, really athletic tight end here. Won't be surprised if he finishes with a decent outing this week here. I think if you're looking for a sleeper tight end, he is that sleeper tight end this week. Same thing can go for Michael Wilson and Greg Dulcich, both sleeper running wide receivers, probably better in 14-man leagues than 12. But they both have sleeper potential because the Commanders have the worst secondary in football. They rank 32nd in the league at stopping fantasy wide receivers this year. So those guys might have an opportunity to produce for us this week. So Patriots, 49ers, must start options. Obviously, Jordan Mason, Ramondre Stevenson, he should bounce back. George Kittle at tight end. I have Jawan Jennings, but this is prior to me knowing about Deebo Samuels being potentially available for this week's matchup here. So we kind of mentioned already about Jawan Jennings. Like if Deebo Samuel's out, you should be really confident in Jawan Jennings. If Deebo plays, he's kind of more as a flex option. Coach Tyler mentioned before at that point, he's not as trusted, but he should be a decent play against a Patriots team here. Some small impact players, Jacoby Brissett, Antonio Gibson, KJ Osborne, Jalen Polk. So how do you feel about Brandon Ayuk? Because we didn't really mention Brandon Ayuk per se, but do you feel confident enough to play him this week?
I don't really feel confident in playing him, kind of like I talked about with Jawan Jennings, just because Debo's possibly not out there. In my mind, Ayuk is the one that gets the shadow from Christian Gonzalez. Obviously, if I'm Gerard Mayo, if I'm the Patriots defensive coordinator, I'm looking at Juwan Jennings and saying, hey, do it again, because I don't think that he can. And so I'm going to hold Brandon Ayuk. He's been obviously the explosive receiver between Samuel and Ayuk. Obviously, last season we saw the big breakout, forcing the whole contract dispute this offseason. But I think Ayuk is going to be slowed down this game. He hadn't really been off to the hottest start, especially coming off the money that he thought that he deserved. And so I am not really confident in him this week. I really want to see him go out and do something before I put a ton of confidence into starting him. Coach Steve, I think you're muted.
No, sorry, my dog's walking in the background here. My bad, guys. I kind of agree on you. Like Ayuk is kind of just Brody. Ayuk is kind of just like he's more of a flex play. Like I don't trust him as a wide receiver 2 this week here. I think the production is just kind of off on him. I'm not getting any background noise here with the dog. So Ayuk is just like, if you have him, you almost have to start him because you have to hope that this is the matchup that he can kind of bounce back. But in the same sense here, if you have better options, like Khalil Shakir has been my like go-to like borderline guy this week. He's the guy I'd probably consider starting over Brandon Ayuk this week. Like I don't have the ton of confidence that Ayuk could play him. Hunter Henry, fine tight end 2. Brock Purdy's a fine high-end QB2. The team wanted to get Demario Douglas involved, and they sure got him involved last week here. 49ers are bad against slot wide receivers so far this year. He's a fine borderline flex option for you this week in fantasy. So that's about it. For the Patriots, there's not a lot of options outside of Ramondre Stevenson, unfortunately. So, all right, Chiefs-Chargers game here. We do have some questions in the chat from Jeb. Let's see. Najee or Berkey Irving in flex, standard league? Najee. Yeah, if we know Jalen Warren, you have to go with Najee Harris as seeing at least a bulk of the workload over what Bucky Irving and his potential injury is dealing with right now. Cole Kmet or Mark Andrews?
Kmet.
Yeah.
Kmet I will say this week I'm sitting Mark Andrews for Pat Freiermuth. So
this will be the week that Mark Andrews bounces back, just so everyone knows. Everyone's going to sit him this week. This is going to be the week where he bounces back.
I keep trying to trade him for y'all so that he'll be off my team and then he'll return to his glory. But people won't bite. So sorry, guys.
I think the safe option is to go with Kmet, personally. Yeah. The safe option is Kmet. But Andrews, I know it's been bad, but this is the matchup where Buffalo is really bad against covering tight ends. Just saying. But this would be the matchup that Mark Andrews bounces back. And if he doesn't after this week, I don't know what to tell you. I think at that point he's droppable. All right. Confidence starts for this Chiefs-Chargers game. Mahomes and Rishi Rice. That's about it. That's the only people I feel completely confident in. Small impact players like Samaje Perine. I don't know how much Kareem Hunt's going to get involved, but I don't think I trust him in his first game. Gus Edwards has basically fallen off. Joshua Palmer really hasn't been there. Quentin Johnson plays a lot at the outside. He plays very little in the slot, and Chiefs have been really good against outside receivers still this year. So I'm not really trusting him in his touchdown upside that he's been offering, especially if Justin Herbert does not play this week here. It's even more of an option that I don't want to start Johnston. So Travis Kelce, starting Travis Kelce.
I feel like you gotta. There's just
history shows it. The history says he has great games against the Chargers.
Yeah. This has to be the bounce back week for him, or there's going to be just a lot of discourse on why he does not need to be their starting tight end anymore.
Yeah, that's true. Yeah, if you can't start him this week here, I don't know what else you could possibly say about him. So that's for sure. I don't know what else you could really say about Travis Kelce. If you can't start him this week, when can you start him? Carson Steele, another RB3, Xavier Worthy, boomer bust, wide receiver flex. J.K. Dobbins, you start starting him?
Yeah. Obviously still getting all the touches. Definitely wasn't as productive against that difficult Steelers defense that we've talked about. But I think they can run the ball. I think they're going to have to run the ball. Obviously, they are missing their 2 tackles, which will make that a whole lot more difficult. But with Herbert questionable, I don't think they're going to be able to throw the ball a ton, even if he does play. So it's going to be forced on the ground. So Dobbins is going to at least get the volume. But yeah, not a good matchup. Not a great showing last week. Doesn't make me excited, but I think he's going to get enough volume to where he has the opportunity to go do something with it.
That's fair. Yeah, I think Dobbins is a fine flex option. The volume will be there. I'm not expecting a big game from Dobbins, but if he gets you 10 points, it's a floor play, I think, at best with him. Lad McConkey is kind of like a borderline flex option in the slot. I think he'll see enough targets to be somewhat relevant for fantasy. I wrote Hayden Hurts instead of Hayden Hurst. So, you got to love that today. Tight end, good matchup, but the quarterback is a question mark. If Herbert's not starting, I don't really want anything to do with Hayden Hurst. So keep him out of there. And I don't know what to do with the LA quarterback situation. Like, if Justin Herbert starts, like, I don't know. I ranked him as a QB3 this week. He's injured. He's not throwing the ball a ton. And the Chiefs are going to be so far ahead that I don't think the Chargers will know what to really do with themselves. So, if it's a backup quarterback, I don't really want to trust any Chargers in this game here. Like Easton Stick, Tyler Heineke, like I don't really want to trust anyone in this game. So, all right, Sunday night football game here. We're really at the Sunday night football game. I feel like I missed a game. I feel like
Buffalo. We didn't do Raiders Browns.
Did I not have them on here? No way. Let me see.
And it's not a game we're talking about. It's okay.
Oh, here we go. How did I miss them? Oh, I must have went over them. All right, Raiders, Browns. Confident starts, Jerome Ford, Brock Bowers, Amari Cooper, and Jacoby Myers with Devontae Adams out. Small impact. Zamir White is no longer near starting lineups, nor maybe be on rosters right now. Gardner Minshew is on a short leash. That's a concern about wanting to start him this week. Jordan Akins, he's just a fine tight end. I don't really want to think he's going to be too impactful. Who do we want to start with here? Jerry Jeudy, Trey Tucker. How do you
feel? I'll go Jeudy over Tucker.
All right.
Yeah. Jeudy, again, this passing offense for the Browns hasn't been good. Deshaun Watson has not thrown for over 200 yards in a game this season. Had 2 passing touchdowns last week, but that was against the Giants. So I don't put too much weight into that. And it's not like he's not throwing the ball. 45, 34, and 37 attempts through the first 3 weeks. So he's throwing the ball. It's just not going anywhere downfield. So Jeudy is a very low-end flex play for me if you need to put him out there. I think he can get you double-digit fantasy points. But it's going to be a pain watching the box scores or watching that game and hoping that he does something.
Yeah, see, Jerry Jeudy's making Coach Tyler sleepy. That's how
their offense puts me to sleep.
Elijah Moore has a deep sleeper option this week. Don't be surprised if he ends up going off. Deshaun Watson, QB2. The offensive line are missing some tight end tackles. So are the Chargers game. The Chargers are missing their 2 top tackles. So keep that in mind for the Chargers game. But so are the Browns. It's really, you probably don't want to start Deshaun Watson at all, even in Superflex this week. Madison might be the best player on the Browns in terms of running backs, not running backs for the Raiders, not running backs. Raiders running backs, not Browns running backs. Raiders running backs. Alexander Madison might be the best option because of his passing efficiency that he offers in the passing game. That's really about it. Tucker is an interesting guy, but I want to see it again. Even though I wrote Trucker, I want to see it again before I really trust him in a lineup. But I don't think he's going to be more than a 1 week wonder. Jeudy is fine. Elijah Moore, I said deep sleeper. So, all right, now we go to Buffalo to Baltimore game here. Confidence starts in this game. Allen and Jackson, obviously both quarterbacks are must-start options. James Cook should be pretty confident play. Dalton Kincaid should be a really confident play. Khalil Shakir, Steve Flowers. Small impact players, Ray Davis, Keon Coleman, Rashard Bateman. Coleman might be one that bites me in the butt come Sunday night, but that's okay. We talked about the Ravens tight ends. We talked about Mark Andrews and how, you don't really want to play him, but this could be the week that he ends up bouncing back finally. Do you have any concerns with Derrick Henry and the game script kind of falling out of favor for him?
Yeah. Just, like we saw week 1, Derrick Henry wasn't used a ton because they were really just back and forth with Kansas City. And so they didn't have the ability to just run the ball out. They had to throw it a ton, which getting a call from my mother. But let me turn up my do not disturb is on. That's great. So
do not disturb.
yeah, by Derrick Henry, we saw, like you have down here, Justice Hill has a good game script, where Derrick Henry has a bad game script because Justice Hill came in and just dominated the receiving game. I think this is a game where it's going to be very similar to that KC game where it's kind of back and forth, almost playing catch up the entire time, not really managing the clock as much as, hey, we have to go score every drive or we're going to lose this game. And so I think it could bode well for Justice Hill as a lower end flex play for you. But I am not overly excited for Derrick Henry getting, the 20 to 25 touches that you want him to get in a game.
Yeah, I don't think this is going to be like a high-end RB1 Derrick Henry week. Like 10 to 12 points are probably where I can see him finishing as long as he scores a touchdown. I think this is a Derrick Henry needs to score a touchdown type of week where if he doesn't score a touchdown, his numbers don't look that great for us in fantasy football. Justice Hill definitely gets a bump in PPR leagues. I think he gets kind of back to that 5 reception game this week in football due to the game script that's going to probably favor the Bills and not the Ravens as much. So, all right, Titans, Dolphins here. Confident plays. Tony Pollard. I still have Devon A-Chain as pretty much a confident start in my books, even though we kind of mentioned about him and the other running backs, but still they have a better matchup. Calvin Ridley, I still think he's a confident start still. I know last week was not a good week, but Miami secondary does allow a lot of big plays, and I think Ridley can bounce back on that. Jonnu Smith, small impact players, Will Levis, Tyler Boyd, Titans tight ends, Miami's quarterbacks, other Miami Dolphins running backs, if Mostert plays, if Jalen Wright's out there, Jeff Wilson. How do we feel about Tyreek Hill and Jalen Waddle this week?
I'm still nervous. Obviously Tyler Huntley is coming in to be the starting quarterback. That's not, I feel very bad for you. That's obviously not something that you want to hear in the season. But we just saw really kind of a lack of production, especially from what we expect from these guys last week. And I don't think it gets too much better. This Titans defense is a fairly good defense. And I don't think that Tyler Huntley has it in him to just air it out the entire game. He might be able to connect with Tyreek Hill on a deep shot. But I am concerned for them and their value just without Tua, just kind of riding this quarterback carousel until either Tua comes back or the Dolphins trade for anyone to come play quarterback for them.
Yeah, that's fair. Yeah, I think Hill should be fine. I think Hill should be fine as a wide receiver 2. Waddle is more of a wide receiver 4. Tyler Huntley was able to keep one player on the Ravens when he was a starter that one stretch of games. Fantasy relevant. Could be Tyreek Hill. Could be Jalen Waddle. Again, I think that you should proceed with caution with both these wide receivers moving forward. Neither one should be really a completely trusted option. Hill should be okay. Waddle, not so much. That's kind of how I see about them. Unfortunately, that's just what we're playing with. Unless Tyler Huntley can show us a better upside at passing that he's really had never shown over his career, it's kind of where we're leaning towards until if Tua comes back or if they look for even another option outside of the team right now. So Hopkins, wide flexible option. If he continues to be as efficient as he was last week with minimal playing time, then he should probably be in lineups. Tajay Spears, they keep talking about getting him more involved, but are they ever going to do it? It's definitely going to hurt Tony Pollard if that was the case. So I don't know. So Spears is probably small impact play, but maybe this is the week. Miami's got a really bad run defense, so maybe they try to get him more involved in the ground. So, and then last but not least, Seattle versus Detroit. Confident plays. Amon St. Brown, even though it's a tough matchup, I'm starting him. Sam Laporta seems fine and ready to go. Great matchup for him. I think this could be the week where he finally gets going. Detroit Lions running backs. You just got to start both of them and then hope for the best. Both averaging over 10 fantasy points a game. And DK Metcalf has just been too good this year so far to sit him in any game or consider him as on the fence player. Like he's just been playing very well.
small impact players, Noah Fant. Let me just go over a few players here real quick. Both quarterbacks are kind of like meh QB2s in this matchup here. I'm not really thrilled with either one of them. Seattle's running backs, it's a tough matchup. Ken Walker is supposed to come back in this game, so him and Zach Charbonnet might split work week 1. And the Detroit Lions have like the best run defense in football. They are probably not the best options to go after this week, even if Ken Walker comes back and you need him. He might not be able to give you much of a production here. But of the 3 wide receivers, Coach Tyler, Jameson Williams, JSN, Tyler Lockett, how do you rank them in this game?
I'm gonna have to go Lockett, JMO, JSN. Obviously, I've talked about being a big JSN guy, but we really saw him come down to earth after his big breakout game. Everyone thought that week 2 was going to turn the tides, and then he came out and got 3 targets. And so I think that it's going to be Lockett until otherwise proven. Came out 8 targets last week, really back to sort of his normal target share. And so I think it's going to be Lockett, Jameson, and then JSN. Obviously, Jameson is the big play guy. We only saw 3 targets last week out of him against Arizona, sadly, but we had 9 and then 11 in weeks 1 and 2. And so he's had the target share season long. And I think that they want to take a couple shots, especially being in a coach's mind. You're on prime time. The nation is watching. You want to show off the weapons and the tools that you got. And so I think they'll dial up something for JMO to just get past his defender, and he's going to be downfield for a great big chunk play that's going to win you your week.
Okay, that is a fair option there. I think I have JSN, Lockett, Jameson, Williams. That's kind of how I'm going to probably play it this week. Actually, no, that's a lie. JSN, Jameson, and then Lockett. I still low on Lockett, even though Lockett could be the best guy in this matchup. I'm really hoping Jason kind of bounces back this week here. We've seen slot wide receivers produce well against the Lions, even though he's got a tough matchup against Robertson. I'm still hoping that there's a bounce back where this game becomes a little bit more competitive, where it will involve JSN more compared to what we saw out of it last week, where it was a really run-heavy game there. So that's kind of what I'm hoping for. Lockett is going to be the ultimate boom or bust borderline flex. Jameson Williams, the flex option. Hope for that he kind of bounces back after a bad week last week. So, yeah. But that is going to wrap us up tonight, guys. Hopefully you guys enjoyed this. I know I do, even though you can't see my face. But this has been a lot of fun tonight, talking fantasy, getting these week 4 matchups in and out of the way with here, so you guys have an idea of what you need to do in your week 4 matchups. Coach Tyler, anything you want to mention before we get going tonight?
Yeah, go check out Dynasty Nerds. Obviously, me and Coach Steve talk about it every week. Coach Steve does a lot of in-season stuff over there. I'll do a lot more stuff as we get closer to draft season. But go check out Dynasty Nerds. Use code COACH. Jump into the Dynasty GM. Check out how much better than the other teams in your league you are. Or if you're like me and you're already looking at 2025 and the rookies there, go check out the Dynasty Film Room. Really great tool. We've got some great editors over there, making sure everything's cut up for us.
Yes, we have another question real quick. I forgot one more question to throw in here before we really get going. Start 2 wide receivers: Jennings, JSN, London, and Evans.
Let me remember.
Probably Evans for
Bucks
sure.
Playing the Eagles. I gotta go.
I want to go Evans in London, and then
that's what I'm feeling.
If Debo's out, then Jennings and
yeah,
Evans.
I like that. Evans, London, no Debo, then
Jennings, Evans.
Yeah,
that's how I feel about that. Many. All right. Again, thank you guys all for listening. Whether you're listening live on our YouTube channel at the Fantasy Coaches, we always put up a good show for you guys, at least the visual effects that you get to see, at least with our PowerPoints. And if you're listening live on, Spotify, Apple Podcasts, we appreciate you guys as well. Always tune in every single week. We'll be back Monday night to talk about waivers and some other things. And then mostly every Thursday, we try to do a waiver start and sit show. So, but we always will. I will attempt to make sure we get a start and sit show every week, because I think we missed 1 week or something like that. So we will continue to try to get you guys as much information as possible to help you guys win some championship, because that's what we do here at the Fantasy Coaches, help to get you guys a championship at the end of the day. So we thank you guys all for listening. Tune in until next time, guys, and have a good one.
Back to back is not far-fetched. We got a couple of